covered in sliding around.
Jeez. Don't scare anybody.
All right, folks, if everybody else is ready, we'll head on down.
Represent New York. All right, New York.
That's a handy dandy little mini camera.
It's a GoPro.
Okay, good deal. All right, guys. Here we go. So again, for anyone who didn't catch it, my name is Ray. If you have any questions during the tour, please feel free to ask. We are currently descending 210 feet, which is about 64 meters or 21 stories below the surface. The elevator shaft we're traveling down took 2 years and 90 cases of dynamite to excavate. Add another year to actually put the elevator in itself. And 1 more year to the construction process to make the tour what it is today downstairs as far as walkways, handrails, and lighting. Everything started in 1958, finished up by 1962, with the exception of our Cavern suite, which was finished in 2011, where you can actually sleep in the cave. And then in 2017, we actually added a little grotto restaurant down there for you to have a little lunch as well. We do have an emergency exit right outside that door, but that's 284 stairs. We are not climbing back up. So we will always call upstairs, have them fire up that little handy dandy diesel generator, and be right back to the service before you know it. So no worries about getting stuck in the cave tonight. Once we get down, I'm going to open the doors, and you guys are going to notice there'll be a crack right up here. If you'd care to see how far down we've come, you feel free to look right on up the crack. If you have vertigo, I would definitely recommend either not doing it or holding on to something. Here we go, folks. Please watch your step.
Definitely looking up.
I'm good.
Oh, yeah.
Miss Farm.
That's about the most common response. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for the first thing I always like to do is just get this out of the way ahead of time. This is gypsum. This is the one and only thing we ask you to please refrain from touching because it is very stainable. We use it in gypsum board, drywall, and chalk. So other than this, as you can see, lots of rock you can't possibly hurt. If everyone's ready, we're going to take a trek right down this first pathway here.
The only person who could touch it would be Rob.
And as you folks come down, you're going to notice right here in the ceiling on your left, you're going to see one of the gypsum flowers here that has been broken up, which will allow you to see the mineral makeup being gypsum on the outside, selenite crystal, and red wall limestone. The gypsum formations themselves date back about 15 million years, and the limestone walls of the caverns themselves have been dated to 65 million years. Please feel free to come on down, take a peek up in the ceiling, take some pictures if you like. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the way we were discovered happened back in 1927. We had a gentleman named Walter Peck, who was actually a woodcutter for the Santa Fe Railroad. Walter was running extremely late to an extremely important poker game. And he decided to take a shortcut across the prairie and found a sinkhole. And that definitely piqued his interest. However, not enough to stop a poker game, of course. Off to play poker, Walter went, where he met his older brother Miles and some friends, and was telling them about the sinkhole. Well, they were so interested, they canceled the poker game and came straight back to see Walter's hole in the ground. They actually tied 150 foot worth of rope around Walter's waist, lowered Walter 150 foot through the hole with just a kerosene lantern and some matches, and Walter was quite pleasantly surprised because Walter thought he immediately found gold in his ceilings, silver in his sidewalls, and diamonds throughout the cavern. Now the diamonds, folks, we know that is selenite crystals today, but back then Walter thought he was a rich man. When Walter found the cave, it was a constant 56 degrees, winter, spring, summer, fall, day or night, never changed. The humidity was a relative 19 to 20% at the time. Now that we've added lights and started doing tours, our temperature has increased to somewhere between 60 and 62 degrees on any given day. Same situation, winter, spring, summer, fall, day or night. However, our humidity at this time of year, because of the monsoon clouds, we have risen up to about 40 to 50% humidity during these few months here. So it is quite humid for now. Now, folks, we're going to enter our first man-made tunnel. I ask all of you to please watch your heads as we enter, and all of you please watch the third step up. They poured it just a little thicker than the rest. We're not sure why, but we don't want to have anybody trip. We'll meet you right up here in the next cavern.
You know, like the whole water flowing into the hole, they decided to come back the next day with his brother Miles. They tied a rope on his waist, floated him down there, and he died was the luckiest man alive. Finding some gold up one, some silver along the wall, and even some diamonds. Sadly, for a bit, this is maybe go ahead and hop on the back of the board here. Watch out, this is the first of three man toss. Oh, thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, we're standing in a room that we call Chapel of the Ages. Now we call it Chapel of the Ages because at one point in time we were 5,800 feet lower in elevation, and the water that used to flow through these caverns, although it was fresh, was quite acidic. And that acidic water was able to eat away a lot of the softer minerals and limestones, leaving us with these beautiful arch formations that you see throughout the ceiling in this room. And add to that, that we've had about a dozen weddings held down in this room alone. So Chapel of the Ages is very aptly named. Now, as I was saying, we were full of water at one time, and as water will do anytime it is contained, it will always try to find a way out. As you folks come forward, I'd like to have you guys take a peek up in the ceiling here, and you're going to see a formation that we call Cathedral Dome. Now, what happened here was, again, when we were back below the water table, water would always try to find a way out of being contained in this cavern. In this case, it found weak spots in our ceiling and began to eat its way towards the surface. Now, what you're seeing here are two channels of a three-channel ancient waterway, and you folks are more than welcome to come up and crowd me this way so you can get a really good look at it. And what's really interesting is that water was able to actually erode its way 90 feet towards the surface. However, at the 90-foot mark, that water ran into a layer of what we call caliche. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. It's a very hard, very dense clay. It's very common throughout the Arizona and Nevada area. And that layer of caliche never allowed any water to escape to the surface. Otherwise, we would be looking at a sunroof in our cave. Now, what's really interesting is, now that we have risen by the Colorado Plateau, being thrust up to the elevation that it is today, 5,800 feet in this general area, that same layer that never allowed the water to pass to the surface now keeps us 100% completely dry, which is why you do not see stalactites and stalagmites in our cave. We've never had mineral-rich water dripping from our ceiling to create those beautiful formations. What we are known for, however, is two things: size and rarity. Size comes into play when you take into consideration that we are the first largest dry cavern in the United States of America. We are the third largest dry cavern in the entire world. Rarity comes into play when you take into consideration that only 3% of caverns in the entire world are dry or dead. 97% are still living and forming beautiful crystal and stalactite and stalagmite formations for you guys to see. Now, right behind us here, folks, we have two formations that, although they are right next to each other, were formed at two different times throughout the cavern's period. This we call cave coral. This is a lime calcium carbonate formation that was formed back when the cavern was below the water. As you look next to it, you're going to see something we call flowstone. That's kind of a polite way of saying fossilized mud. That was happening as the cavern was draining and drying out. Very beautiful formations. The flowstone actually gives the impression of false stalactites. It's just really interesting to know that these two things that happened thousands of years apart are sitting right next to each other for you guys to see. Feel free, folks, to take some pictures and step back a bit. And I was saying back there that Walter bought this place with intention in mind. And that's exactly what he came down here and did. The first thing he found out as he began to remove his diamond formations from the wall, when they were crumbling to powdery dust in his hand, he realized that he made a mistake. They were not diamonds, far too soft to be diamond. The very second thing Walter found out when the assayers reports came back from Prescott, Arizona, is that his silver ore, which you're going to see a pile of right here, folks, is actually a very low-grade form of tin called considerite. Now, unfortunately for Walter, it would cost more to turn into tin than it would ever be worth as tin itself. And finally, the last drawer from Mr. Peck was his gold in the ceiling. Not anywhere close to gold, folks. This is nothing more than iron oxide, common rust. So unfortunately for Mr. Peck, he never recovered his money mining in these caverns, although he did mine for about 9 years. And that's actually what prompted him to start doing tours here. So in 1927, what Walter would do was Walter would charge you 25 cents. He would then tie 150 foot worth of rope around your waist. Him and his brother Miles would then attach the other end of that rope to a windlass and lower you 150 feet through the natural entrance. And with just a kerosene lantern and some matches, you were allowed, unguided, to explore the caverns at your leisure. Now, here's where things go bad. Walter was pretty forgetful, and he really never took head counts. So come 4:30 in the afternoon, if you wanted out of the cavern, you had better be standing under that natural entrance with your hand on that rope. Because if you weren't, that rope would disappear and Walter would go home for dinner, leaving you to spend the night in the cavern until he came back the next morning. Now this was such a common occurrence that if you entered through the front of our building, you saw the mannequins that say dope on a rope. That is where that saying comes from. The locals would term anyone brave enough to take Walter's tours dopes on ropes, because they were often treated to an overnight in the cave. Now folks, as you guys continue up the trail, you're going to notice to my right, to your left, something that was actually started because of Walter's overnighters in the cave. This is called the Cavern Suite. This is the world's largest hotel room, inspired by Walter himself, built in 2011. We've supplied you down here with 2 queen beds, a futon that folds into a 3rd queen. We actually have a fully functioning restroom, hot and cold running shower, septic system toilet. We brought down a phonograph with some good old Kenny Rogers and Alabama records. We've got a nice flat screen television with a sound bar and a DVD player so you can sit down here and watch movies like The Cave and The Descent. And right around that corner there, we even put a Keurig coffee pot, microwave, and a refrigerator. So everything you could possibly need to survive the night in the cavern. We've had guests range from, Ozzy Osbourne and Jack Osbourne on their cross-country tour. We've had Hayden Panettiere, the actress, Billy Connolly, the comedian. We've had Ghost Adventures come down and do a show here in our cavern. And most recently, we've had Steve-O from the Jackass series of Jackass the Movie. Very interesting. If caves are your thing, this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list opportunity. Now, folks, as you continue to come forward, to the left and right of your trail, you're going to see 2 of what we call floor drains. This will explain where all of our water went as the Colorado Plateau was being thrust up to the elevation that it is today. Please come forward, take a look. These 2 drains here currently go down to the water table about 1,000 feet below us. They're also part of another tour, folks. If anyone is into the spelunking, we actually will get you outfitted with all the padding, gear, helmets, and with an experienced guide, over the fence you go and down into what we call the rabbit holes. What's really great is Walter confined all of his mining activity to these upper layers. So when you do go over those fences and down into those holes, you actually get to see beautiful crystal, gypsum, limestone, formations that remain untouched and undisturbed by man and were never disturbed during the mining years of Mr. Peck. So it is quite beautiful. However, it is also quite claustrophobic. So depending upon whether or not you can do those kind of a tour, we'll leave that up to you guys.
This one looks harder to do than that one.
Yeah, this one's.
It's a lot harder to do than that one. More handholds on that.
Now, folks, you guys feel free to come up. You guys can crowd me if you need to. I'd like everybody to be able to see what's in the case here. Beautiful, beautiful. So ladies and gentlemen, in this glass case, we have 2 pretty rare forms of selenite crystal. One is actually so rare that it is the only one on this level of the caverns to date. And what you're looking at is here in the center of the glass display case is called a haligtite. Loosely translated from Latin, it means horned or hollow. If you Google it, Google says that it is a distorted stalagmite. This was formed back when the water was flowing through the caverns. This one was actually recovered from the waterways we just passed, from about 30 feet down. What's really interesting is that little arch formation there in the center that you're looking at is hollow like a drinking straw. It is so fragile that were you to touch it barehanded, the acid from your skin would actually start a breakdown process of the crystal itself. So we actually cringe to think how many might have been destroyed, not during the mining years, but also during just trying to get these from the lower levels up here to the upper levels. The second crystal you're seeing here in the top, ladies and gentlemen, is a beautiful crystal that's known as winter crystal. And what's really great about it is it's an absolutely beautiful crystal that we sometimes refer to as Walter's diamonds. Unfortunately for Mr. Peck, other than $6.99 in the gift shop, it has no monetary value whatsoever. So again, he never was able to recover that money he invested in the initial property by mining. He did eventually make a couple of bucks probably doing tours, but not much more than that at 25 cents a tour. Now folks, this is where the tour is going to split. The short tour is going to go ahead and head right this way. We have Bo here to collect you guys. He's going to explain what is beyond and take you upstairs and correlate those explanations, with some pictures. Everyone taking the full standard tour is going to follow me right up on this trail here. And I just want to point out, folks, please watch your right side, shoulders and elbows. We don't want to have anyone scratch themselves. Thank you, Mr. Bo.
No problem.
And thank you, folks, for coming on my tour. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, if you see red paint on the floor, it's just indicating a possible slip or trip hazard or some unfinished concrete. Feel free to step up on the platform if you'd like, take a peek back through the expanse of the cavern where you come through. You're more than welcome to take some pictures. Now, this platform has a little bit of sentimental significance for us. This is where the very first wedding in the caverns ever happened. This was April 15th, 1977, and it happened between the girl in our curio shop and the chef in our kitchen. Now, when her parents found out they were going to get married in the cave, they only had one question, and that was why. Her response, although a little corny, was kind of amusing. She said she wanted her marriage to start off on a rock-solid foundation, and there was nowhere to go but up from here. With that being said, before they left, if you look on the wall here, folks, you will see the veil to her 1977 wedding dress. Now, that started a tradition, as you can see, from all of our other brides, leaving a little something to remember them by throughout the years, excuse me. One that we like to focus on is this. You notice there's still a lot of color in those leaves and flowers? That is a 19-year-old wedding bouquet. It's been sitting on that ledge since the year 2000. Wow. Because of the very low humidity, the very minute temperature changes, and add to the fact that we have no living creatures of any kind in the entire cavern system, things are preserved almost perfectly, as you can see here. Wow. Now, folks, please feel free to snap some pictures. I'm going to warn you ahead of time. This is our second man-made tunnel. This tunnel is 160 feet in length. It starts at a 6% grade, but it's going to go to 26% about halfway up. Please take your time, use the handrails, watch your heads as we enter. And this tunnel itself took 2 years and 40 cases of dynamite to blow out. So I'll meet you right at the top. You folks come right on up behind me.
We will take the back end so I can.
So we go this way or we go? You're coming right behind me.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Now, for any of you folks that are interested, you'll notice that you'll see some of these dynamite pockets that are still in existence in some of the side walls. You'll notice the ones from about the halfway mark down are pointed in one direction. The ones from about the halfway point up are pointed in the other direction. What they did was blew from both ends and connected the two caverns by blowing from both ends to the middle. And that's what these holes in the walls are. You'll actually see them all through the entire tunnel. Get the blood flowing right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're standing in a room called the Halls of Gold. This is also the largest room in the cavern at 630 feet in length. Now, they called it the Halls of Gold because if you glance at the ceiling, you'll see that this is where Walter thought the majority of his gold ore would come from. Now, unfortunately for that gentleman, we know how that worked out. Now, Cuban Missile Crisis, October 1962, President Kennedy declared us a fallout shelter for excuse me, for 2,000 people from the surrounding 65 miles. At that point in time, the Civil Defense Department brought down food in the form of unleavened crackers and a hard candy carbohydrate supplement. They also brought down several hundred barrels of water, each containing 17.5 gallons, medical and sanitation kits, initially to support 2,000 people for only 2 to 3 weeks, which is no time at all during a nuclear crisis. Now in 2011, during Afghanistan and Iraq, we were again reminded that we are still a fallout shelter to this day. This time the civil defense guys opted to bring down water in the form of water bottles, well over 1,000 cases, and this time they opted to bring down food in the form of MREs, meals ready to eat. Now with the additional supplies and the fact that all of the 62 supplies are still viably nutritious, we can keep 2,000 people down here for 6 months. And the reason we cannot exceed the 2,000 person maximum is we would exhaust our air supply before it could replenish itself on a daily basis. And that's why they have us maxed out at 2,000 people. Now, as you folks come forward in this case here in front of me, you're gonna be able to see the original medical supplies, sanitation supplies, and the original food supplies that were brought down in 1962. Please feel free to come forward, take some pictures. I'm just gonna step back out of the way, give you guys some room.
Through the cracks in the walls, through the shafts. And it just can't replenish itself fast enough daily.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
based on barometric pressure actually, and what we have is we have another cave here. I'm going to show you guys in just a bit. We call it the mystery room, and the mystery is plain and simply that even though we know the air comes and goes through there, in 2 years of exploration by the National Speleological Society, they still haven't found the transfer point. So they're still looking.
They're still looking for where
It transfers, yeah,
Where-
where it forces in and out,
Yeah.
and they've been doing it for 2 years. They come about every 90 days.
Wow.
All right, folks, I just want to ask everybody to please again watch your head and shoulders on the right-hand side as we continue down the trail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to descend just a bit to about 270 feet below the surface, so please watch your step, use the handrails. And folks, at this point, I'm going to let all of you pass me just so I can keep this small passageway illuminated. We fondly call the rock on the left Concussion Dome, so please watch your heads.
Okay, I gotta watch my head. We're not through this yet, I'm gonna bump my head.
You're going to be entering a formation we call Snowball Palace. And this is just another 15-year-old beautiful gypsum formation that unfortunately sustained some damage during the mining years, some human contact, but still quite beautiful.
Keep going until trying to find the transfer point where the air will come up to here. And they can't find it. So they're still exploring.
Now, folks, one of the things we'd like to show you here is just plain and simply a little bit of damage that was done, and it kind of goes just to show the absorbency of gypsum. If you look at the brown stain in the lower portion of that gypsum wall, that's approximately 15 to 20 years of human contact during the mining years, as well as during Walter's unguided tours. Now, the first thing I always like to clarify is that this was not maliciously done. 1927, they had no clue what gypsum was, much less how absorbent or the damage by touching it would do. So we call it incidental contact. Now, in contrast to human contact, you notice the pink gypsum in the wall behind you here by the white light. That is happening because gypsum is quite absorbent, and it's actually doing two things. It's absorbing some of the red wall limestone color and changing itself from a white to a pink. But also, there is a form of algae that grows on gypsum itself that will also turn pink. The only way to distinguish the difference between the pink from the red wall and the pink from the algae is under a microscope by a geologist. So we do know that because it is a natural mineral interaction, and it's not done by human contact, there will be no degradation of the formation. So we're going to have a little bit of a trade-off. We will eventually lose some of this wall, but we are going to gain a beautiful pinkish red gypsum wall to have to show you guys in the future. And because it's natural, there's no degradation of the formation. So kind of a little trade-off. It's really quite beautiful. The other thing that happened here, again, incidental contact. 1927, they did not have the benefit of LED flashlights. They had to use kerosene lanterns, and some of the gypsum absorbed the kerosene smoke out of the air. Now again, it was incidental contact by the kerosene. They didn't have anything else to work with. And the really great thing is, other than the discoloration, because it was just simply smoke, there's no degradation of the formation there as well. It's always looked the same. We call that cave popcorn. And we're quite pleased to announce that we're not losing any of this wall as far as we know right now. As far as our records show, this wall has always looked the same with the discoloration as well. So folks, we're going to head on up the trail. Please feel free again to take some pictures. We're going to head up towards the mystery room, which will explain our air supply. We might have some Trekkies around, so that's Leonard and McCoy. Just ignore it, Bones. So ladies and gentlemen, we call this the mystery room for one reason. The mystery is plain and simply that in all the time that the cavers have, from the National Speleological Society have been exploring this portion of our cavern, looking for our air transfer point, they have yet to find it. And what we do know is everything is based on barometric pressure. So for example, today, right now, it is a low pressure day. You can't feel it, but there is air coming into this cavern from this cave. Once it builds pressure, it's going to force itself up the elevator shaft. When I start taking you folks back up top, you're going to notice a breeze coming up through the crack of the elevator. Now, on a high pressure day, you plain and simply reverse that. The air is going to come down the elevator shaft, build to pressure in these rooms, and push itself out this cave. Those are the days our cavers want to be here, because what they work with nowadays are very light incense sticks. They're able to light that incense and follow that smoke deeper into this portion of the cave, exploring further and expanding our wild tour, which is what takes place in this cave. You get to, for 3 hours, with the proper gear and a guide, go down to a depth of 318 feet below the surface and explore everything that the cavers have made safe to this point. It's a 3-hour tour. However, this is the most claustrophobic of all of our tours. Do not be fooled by the large opening. By the time you get back towards that red glow, you're about hands and knees, and after that, it's pretty much army crawling and sliding up through one-man-sized chutes. So, beautiful tour, beautiful formations, untouched again by Mr. Peck and his mining operations, but it is quite claustrophobic. So, yes, sir?
How far have they gone back?
They've gone back right now almost a mile. And it's taken them 2 years to do that. They've actually had a couple of false leads where they actually had went 800 or 900 feet in the wrong direction that came to a dead end. They gate those off so that we don't take you on a tour doing that. But so it has slowed progress. They should have been farther, but they have to explore every lead. So what they do when they find one of those dead ends is they gate it and just leave it gated so that when we take you on the tour, we have an open path to take you on. But it does slow things down for them as far as exploring goes. Please feel free to snap some pictures, folks. We're going to head on the Bobcat Trail. I want to caution everybody here, please take your time, use the handrails. This is about a 36 to a 38% grade. And on the way up, folks, as you'll notice, if you look back towards this direction, you're going to get some really beautiful shots, the higher you get.
Have they found where the air comes out?
Not yet, no.
It's a mile back.
Still looking. And here's something really interesting, folks. If we share air with the Grand Canyon walls, which is one of the myths, that's 45 miles away. That means the air that we're breathing standing here right now has traveled 2 weeks through that cave to get here. But because it's traveled 2 weeks through limestone being filtered, it's cleaner now than they were breathing it at the canyon 2 weeks ago with all the motorhomes, motorcycles, RVs, and cars. And it's going to take them quite some time to find that hole if it's 45 miles away. Don't worry, he's quite tame.
Wow.
Excuse me, folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Bob. Bob is a 169-year-old mummified bobcat. We found Bob in the year 1950. And when they found him, he was pretty much in the position you see him in now, with the exception of the back legs that you see are missing. They had the presence of mind to leave Bob where he was, gather up those back legs and freeze them. Now, in 1991, we sent those back legs to the University of Arizona in Tucson. They were nice enough to carbon date them, and that's where we come up with the date of 1850. So Bob's been down here 100 years before we found him, 69 years since, and the theory behind Bob is very sound, so I will share it with you. What they assume happened is Bob probably fell through the natural opening, which is ahead of us in that direction. Upon the fall, he obviously broke his legs. Now he's trapped, injured, beginning to dehydrate in a limestone cavern with no fluid, no water. But they think what prompted him to crawl this direction was him being able to smell fresh air coming from that mystery room, thinking it was a way out. Unfortunately, Bob succumbed to his injuries here. And this is pretty much where we left him. Now, most of you probably are familiar, but if you are not sure what Bob should look like, this is Robert. Robert comes from the mysterious land of India. Yes, I get a lot of school tours through here, so that's what Bob should look like. This is the before and the after. Yeah, really unfortunate.
Poor Bob.
Poor Bob, right? Well, we got him. I'll tell you, it's really sad because I had so many little kids come through here on tours crying, thinking that was Fluffy the house cat, that we had to find some way for them to see that it wasn't, you know, it wasn't Fluffy. Right. So we ended up getting this guy from eBay. And it seems to be doing the trick because I've had a lot less hysterical children on my tours. So folks, we're going to head up around this corner. I'm sorry?
Hysterical adults?
No. Well, the funny one was the mom with the crying girl was telling the daughter, oh, it's fake, it's fake. Then the other parents are telling the other kids, no, it's real, it's real. So I got an argument going on back and forth, and I'm just like, okay, let's go away from here. As we come around this other side, folks, you're going to get a much better look at how many supplies are here. That front view does not do it justice. Now they tell me, folks, that at 8.3 pounds per gallon for the water plus the barrel weight, each one of those barrels that you're looking at weighs about 160 pounds. The only benefit that these poor guys from the Civil Defense Department had was that in both shipments, the elevator was in use. However, from the elevator to this point, there was a whole bunch of manpower involved. it was not a good time to work for the Civil Defense Department.
Wow.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Now, folks, as we do come down here, I just want to point out really quickly, please watch both sides of the trail here. Taller ladies and gentlemen, please watch your head in front. And as we round this boulder on the left, please kind of give it a wide berth. We have a little nub of rock. I don't want anyone to stub a toe, please. And you guys, please feel free to go right on down. I'm going to make sure everybody gets around this.
Could you imagine 6 months to get to Hawaii? Or 6 months to dinner? I complained about 3 months when I first got there. Yeah. I complained 3 months when I first got to Iraq.
And so some of you folks remember seeing cave coral in the beginning. Well, in this situation, it's the same lime calcium carbonate, but because it's hanging from the wall, they like to call it grape clusters in this case. It does look like clusters of grapes. Very beautiful. And right above your heads here in the wall, you'll actually see a formation that almost survived the mining years. You'll notice that a lot of the crystal is gone from this portion here. You can actually see the pig marks along the side, but you will see some ribbons of winter crystal. And if you look at the granite itself, you'll see the sparkles. Now again, put yourself in Walter's shoes, black cavern, a little bit more of a yellow light coming from his kerosene lantern, and you can see why the man thought he was rich.
Diamonds.
Yes, exactly right. And it's just unfortunate he was never able to turn it around for himself. Please feel free to snap some shots, folks. I'm going to just stand right up here by Mammoth Dome. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the tallest of our ancient waterways. This time that water was able to erode its way 142 feet from where I'm standing to the top of this dome. And what you're looking at there is caliche. That is the layer that keeps us 100% completely dry. Now, interestingly enough, this is just 65 feet shy of actually breaking through to the surface somewhere in the employee parking lot, I might add. So we're glad they sonared that so we could put parking over it. And what we stop here for as well is this beautiful formation. This, as you can see right off the bat, doesn't look like silver, gold, and diamonds. It survived the mining years. You're seeing red wall limestone. You're seeing grape clusters. You're seeing cave coral. These little guys here, these are called gypsum flowers. And they require so little moisture that they are the one and only thing still growing in the cave today. Just the act of us breathing creates enough humidity, and in these higher humidity months, it really helps out as well. They are still growing. The flat white crystal that you're seeing is that winter crystal we talked about earlier. This more chunky, blocky crystal that you're seeing is called selenite crystal. You're also seeing some very tiny stalactites right up underneath this ledge, and I mean tiny, right here in this little row, and there's actually a few here. And what happened, you folks have already probably figured it out, as the Colorado Plateau was slowly rising, our water was slowly draining. However, the cracks and crevices, or nooks and crannies, if you will, of these formations were able to retain a little bit of that water, slow down the drip, and allow these little formations to be created. And even though they are only 2 to 3 inches long at most, they're still probably somewhere between 50 to 60 years old in the making, just for these little 2 and 3 inch formations. Really quite beautiful. We're happy to have it to show you. You'll also notice over here, folks, some winter crystal poking through the gypsum. You're starting to see some of that color change as well here, where that gypsum, is starting to draw color from either red wall limestone, which may go behind there, or that algae we spoke about earlier. Just a really beautiful formation. Really happy that Walter ignored it, because this is what our cave should look like. This is the epitome of what we should be able to show you, and unfortunately, a lot of it did not survive. Now I'm going to get out of the way, folks. Anybody who wants pictures, this is a great spot, one of the most popular picture spots in the cave. And, excuse me guys. And I'm gonna go ahead and fill you in on a little bit of the change in ownership. So, 1954 rolls around. Walter gets a letter from the government, which is never good, especially when the front of the letter says IRS. They want to know when Walter plans on paying 27 years of back property taxes. Walter's response is obviously insufficient because they seize the property and sell it. The second owners are known as the Ringsby brothers. They are more commonly known today as the Yellow Freight Trucking Company. They are responsible for every single solitary thing that you guys are seeing today on this tour. From the walkways and handrails, the lights, all of the elevator shafts, man-made tunnels, the ceiling of the natural entrance. And then for some reason, late 80s, early 90s, they opted to sell. And in 91, John and Mike and Diane, the three current owners, purchased the property after, remember, coming here as kids. Now, I believe Walter paid about $800 for this place back in 1927. I believe it was sold in 91 for $1 million, and I have no clue if that's factual or not. It's just something that I read. So it went up in value, definitely. All right, folks, we are going to head on up the trail here. This is going to take us up towards the natural entrance. It'll also show you how they poured all this concrete. And then we'll meet the star of the show, Miss Gertrude. And anyone that wants to walk up there and take a peek, you are more than welcome. So ladies and gentlemen, what they did with the concrete was really quite interesting, ingenious actually. Looking at the box and the wheelbarrow, you're thinking pretty primitive, but if you notice up in the ceiling above that box, right about where my light's shining, you're gonna see a hole that's about the size of a coffee can that was drilled from the surface all the way through the limestone into the cave. They then mixed all of the concrete, very loose, very wet, because you're pouring it through limestone. And they poured it through that hole into that box, from that box to that wheelbarrow, and that wheelbarrow is probably the reason it took 11 months for two guys to pour the entire 1 mile of walkways. Because I would have wondered myself whether there was no other wheelbarrow in the county, or not even a larger wheelbarrow in the county. But hey, it is what it is. And
Two men did it in a month?
11 months.
Oh, 11.
Yes, sir, 11 months. No, I wish they did it in a month.
Even 11 months.
Yeah, it's quite a feat for 1 mile of walkway.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then that was actually sealed because one of the owner's grandkids would like to sit up top and drop rocks through the hole. So there were several times tours stopped, the cave was caving in, so they had to go ahead and seal that eventually. And sealing it was really interesting because all they did was add less water to the concrete mix until it started clumping and sealing the hole. Really that simple. Yeah, genius. By today's standard, it's so primitive, but back then in 1927,
Oh, yeah.
or excuse me, 36, excuse me. All right, guys, and what you're seeing over here behind me, up in the ceiling, is called a swing bridge. This is the swing bridge that led to the natural entrance. As you can see from the rope here, this is where Walter would lower you down, let you start your unguided tours. This is about where you would land. Keep in mind, there were no walkways or handrails, so you were wandering around in a rubble field like this. And the swing bridge is interesting because it used to be the scaffolding used to complete the Hoover Dam, which back then was known as the Boulder Dam. Now keep in mind, in 1936, we were just coming out of the Great Depression. They wanted to keep guys working, so they took the scaffolding from the Hoover Dam, donated it to Walter, sent a few guys